Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to put two of my favorite guitars side by side. My PRS SC245 from 2008. This is my main guitar, my favorite guitar that I own. This guitar has been through a lot with me and it's a very, very special instrument. And my Gibson Les Paul Standard Premium Plus from 2002, another guitar that has been through a lot with me that I absolutely love. And I get so many questions about, what's the difference between these two guitars and which one would I go for in a pinch. So let's get into that. It's not a simple one is better than the other type of answer. I want to give you all some clips. I want to talk about some of the specs. I want to talk about the similarities and the differences between these instruments. Let's do it. Let's start by talking about my Les Paul. The OG design, the all-important single cut carved top, maple on the top. This one's got a beautiful piece of figured maple, mahogany back, mahogany neck. This is a standard Premium Plus model from 2002, and it's got the infamous headstock tape mod. If you want to know more about that, because I know some of you are going to ask about this in the questions, watch the Don't Play Authentic video I did last year. It's basically just a joke that I've stuck with. Don't worry too much about it. It definitely doesn't make your guitar sound better, but I want to leave the kind of politics of guitar manufacturers aside as much as I can in this video and just talk about this instrument. This doesn't have a lot of the original parts on it. And by not a lot of the original parts, I think the only original things on here at the moment, aside from the wood, are the frets and the nut. The machine heads I've changed to a set of Goto SD90 locking machine heads. I've got Tone Pro's locking hardware on here, and I think the biggest difference on this is that I have a set of Martin A. Smith PAF style humbuckers in there, which sound phenomenal, and they really, really suit this guitar. The thinking with this instrument for me is that sometimes you just want that sound. You want that vintage Les Paul sound that is on all of those classic records. And whether you're thinking about, the Beano album with Eric Clapton, whether you're thinking about ZZ Top, whether you're thinking about Jimmy Page, whether you're thinking about Slash, whether you're thinking about, all these people who have played these iconic Les Pauls, this just kind of ticks the box for me. Like when I listen to those records, this guitar kind of gets me pretty close. And also aesthetically speaking, I mean, it's fantastic. It's a sunburst flame top Les Paul, and you want it to sound as good as it looks. This guitar for me is my low gain to medium gain guitar. Anytime I have to play something that's, got a sweet kind of bluesy tone about it, or it's got a rock crunch, I'm going to gravitate towards this guitar. Let's talk about the single cut now. This is by far the most featured instrument on this channel. It is a 2008 PRS SC245. It's got the bird outlines on there. And I know people get really hung up about the kind of inlays on PRS guitars. I always forget about it until I have to talk about it. And I think the birds are really, really cool. But this guitar, in contrast to the Les Paul, everything is original on it except for the machine heads, which I also changed to a set of Goto SD90 locking tuners, mostly just for consistency. My other PRS guitars have locking machine heads. These come stock with non-locking machine heads, so I wanted locking machine heads that still look like the originals. That's why I went with the Gotos. And everything else on it is pretty much stock standard. You've got a classic Les Paul style wiring, although this control here is the volume for the bridge pickup, and this is the volume for the neck pickup. So the layout is a little bit different to a traditional Les Paul. There's a few different lines. There's a nice little tummy cut in here. The body, I believe, is maybe just a little bit thinner. Don't quote me on that one. And you have this gorgeous natural binding on there. The other main difference as well, you have this kind of contoured cutaway in here for easier access to the upper frets. And a really important feature, I think, on this guitar that the Gibson doesn't have is the straight string pull over the nut. This means that it just holds its tuning way better, especially live compared to the Les Paul standard. Other than that, they're set neck, 22 fret, 24.5-inch scale guitars, mahogany, maple. They're pretty similar. Let's actually have a listen to a few different sound clips. We're going to start with just kind of a bluesy tone, and I'm going to start with a Les Paul and transition over to the single cut. In standard tuning, you don't hear this guitar in standard tuning much on this channel, but we're going to hear it. Let's do it. So again, they sound really, really similar, but to me, the Singlecut overall is a little bit smoother sounding, whereas the Les Paul just kind of cops a little bit more of that kind of vintage bluesy vibe with that particular setup. I'm going to crank up a Plexi amp sim in my Axe FX3 now, and we're going to hear these side by side in more of a rock setting. And in that clip, I think you could really start to hear there the difference in the tone and especially the pick attack. If you go back and listen to that clip and kind of just have a listen for the pick attack, this kind of has a higher resonant frequency with the pickups. And I think that's probably just the design, whereas this one has more of a low mid thing going on. To me, this guitar has a lot of bite, whereas this one has a lot of grunt. Having said that, let's tune them both down to drop C, because this guitar normally lives in drop C for me. It's my main guitar. With Ragdoll, we play in drop C, and this really just comes alive as a chunk machine. Not that the Les Paul sounds bad, it's just got a different character going on. Let's hear it in the context of a mix.
Crown on my head, down on your knees. I let you treat me like a god. With hand on heart, I pledge allegiance to your brazen birds. But still you treat me like a god. Still you treat me like a...
Again, that just kind of further emphasizes the points I've been making about the differences in the tone, even though they're super similar. There is something that I really, really like about this guitar in that the way that kind of sonic profile blends with the bass guitar in that particular song. And this is a big reason why I always kind of reach for this guitar when I'm playing Ragdoll songs. It just fits the sonic character of what we do, whereas the Les Paul had a different thing going on. I'm sure a bunch of you would really, really like that particular character. I'm sure a bunch of you out there probably couldn't tell the difference, and you're sitting there going, Leon, why? Just tell us which one you want to pick. But there is one last thing that I want to look at, and that is both of these guitars with heaps of gain playing some lead lines. And this is where the performance factor really comes into it. For me, the PRS is just so much easier to play. The frets are slightly bigger. The edges of the fretboard are a lot smoother, and I just feel more at home on it. But having said that, let's hear the same solo played on both guitars. Again, there are differences there, even though the differences are subtle, but I just find the PRS considerably easier to play, and under those extreme high gain conditions, I find it just kind of maintains a little bit more clarity, and it has a little bit more of the character that I personally want in that sort of setting. Having said that though, you know, this guitar for me lives in drop C. It's my main guitar for all the Ragdoll stuff, and then this guitar pretty much lives in standard tuning, because when I want to get that sound out of a guitar in standard tuning, I want that kind of Les Paul bite, crack, bark, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to reach for this guitar. If I want the ultimate kind of riff machine or something that I can really express my solos on, I'm going to reach for the Singlecut. And the other thing about the Singlecut for me is that when I play it, I'm so inspired to write music, and I've written so many songs on this guitar. So that is a big factor in why I consider this my main guitar, but also why I love this guitar and why I keep it. The final thing I want to talk about though is consistency. And in my opinion, the PRS manufacturing is far more consistent than anything that I've seen from Gibson. One little anecdote that I like to share with people is that last year in 2019, I went and did a clinic in the United States. I didn't have my main guitar with me, but I was able to borrow a PRS 594, and I had about 10 minutes with the guitar before I did the clinic, which consisted of me tuning it to drop C, stretching the strings, and then basically going and doing an hour-long, it was probably more than an hour-long clinic with it, and it felt so well set up and so close to this guitar. The neck profile was different. Obviously, the finish on a 594 is a little bit different, but it felt comfortable. And I've played a lot of Les Pauls over time, and some of them are just breathtakingly awesome instruments. This one to me is a really, really good Les Paul. I've played some great reissues as well, but I've also played some absolute stinkers. I mentioned that Play Authentic video, or the Don't Play Authentic video that I did a while ago. There's kind of more of my thoughts about Gibson in that video, so I'll leave it for that one. You can go and watch that one. But for me, the kind of quality control on PRS is a very big selling point. If you play one PRS and you really like it, in my opinion, I would be a lot more confident buying one sight unseen than I would a Les Paul. And the other factor with this guitar, this one has had a whole lot of extra work that's gone into it to kind of get it sounding the way I want it, whereas this guitar, I more or less pulled off the wall and it was perfect for me. So there are those factors to consider as well. Having said all of that, I want to hear from you. Which one would you go with? Which one did you go with? If you own a single cut guitar, did you go with a Gibson Les Paul? Did you go with a PRS? Or did you go for something else? There's so many great single cuts out there. We really are living in this golden age of guitar manufacturing. So I would love to hear from you all. Which one do you like the best? Which one would you go with? And discuss amongst yourselves in the comments. Be excellent to one another. I'll see you next time. As always, thanks for watching.